There's one of them things within a mile of us.
Oh, Sensei.
Maybe a little off my game here.
When Netflix released the Sea Beast asterisk, animation fans around the world immediately started making comparisons to another beloved animated adventure, How to Train Your Dragon asterisk. At first glance, the two movies seem quite different. One takes place on the open sea, while the other is set in a Viking village filled with dragons. But once you watch them closely, it's easy to see why so many viewers feel they share the same spirit. Of course, this doesn't mean the films tell the exact same story. Instead, they explore many of the same themes in their own unique ways. Both movies ask an important question. What if the creatures everyone fears aren't actually the real villains? That simple idea becomes the foundation for two unforgettable adventures that challenge long-held beliefs and encourage audiences to see the world from a different perspective. The first comparison almost everyone notices is between Red, the massive sea beast, and Toothless, the famous Night Fury dragon. Both creatures are introduced as terrifying monsters whose names alone strike fear into the hearts of experienced hunters. Stories describe them as dangerous, unstoppable, and responsible for countless attacks. Before audiences ever get to know them, they're built up as legendary threats. As the stories unfold, however, those frightening reputations begin to disappear. Instead of mindless monsters, both Red and Toothless turn out to be intelligent, emotional, and capable of forming deep bonds with humans. Their expressive eyes, playful behavior, and moments of vulnerability quickly win over both the characters in the movies and the audiences watching at home. It's a reminder that appearances can be incredibly misleading. Another major similarity is the role these creatures play in changing the world around them. Toothless transforms Hiccup's understanding of dragons, while Red completely changes the way Jacob Holland and Macy view sea beasts. In both stories, the creature isn't simply a companion. It becomes the catalyst for an entirely new way of thinking. Without meeting these remarkable animals, the heroes would never question everything they had been taught since childhood. That brings us to another strong connection between the two films, the hunters themselves. Entire generations have grown up believing that hunting monsters is both honorable and necessary. It's more than just a profession, it's a way of life. Families pass these traditions down from one generation to the next, and becoming a successful hunter is considered a source of pride and respect. But everything changes once the heroes encounter the very creatures they've spent their lives fearing. Instead of finding ruthless monsters, they discover living beings with emotions, intelligence, and families of their own. The realization forces them to confront a difficult truth. Maybe the stories they've always believed aren't completely accurate. One of the most compelling parts of both films is watching the main characters wrestle with this discovery. Questioning a belief that has shaped your entire life isn't easy. It means challenging your family, your friends, and even your own identity. Both movies show that real courage isn't just about fighting monsters. It's also about admitting when you've been wrong and having the strength to change. The friendships between humans and creatures are another reason these movies feel so similar. Rather than relying on fear or force, the heroes slowly earn the trust of animals that were once considered enemies. These relationships aren't built overnight. They develop through patience, kindness, and mutual respect, making them some of the most memorable parts of each story. The emotional connection also changes the way the audience sees these creatures. What begins as fear gradually becomes admiration. By the end of each film, it's difficult to imagine viewing Red or Toothless as villains at all. Instead, they become symbols of hope, compassion, and understanding. The protagonists themselves also share several important qualities. They're naturally curious, compassionate, and willing to think differently from everyone around them. While other hunters focus only on defeating monsters, these heroes choose to ask questions. Why are the creatures attacking? Is there another side to the story? Could everyone have misunderstood the truth? That curiosity sets them apart from the rest of their communities. It also makes them the perfect heroes because they aren't afraid to challenge traditions that have existed for generations. Their willingness to seek the truth ultimately changes not only their own lives, but the future of everyone around them. Another similarity is how both movies use breathtaking action sequences alongside heartfelt emotional moments. Whether it's an exciting dragon flight through the clouds or a dramatic chase across stormy seas, both films deliver spectacular animation while never losing sight of the relationships at the center of the story. The action is thrilling, but it's the emotional journey that stays with audiences long after the credits roll. Both movies also carry powerful messages about prejudice and misunderstanding. People often fear what they don't understand, and those fears can grow stronger when passed down through stories and tradition. By encouraging their heroes to look beyond appearances, both films remind viewers that empathy and understanding can be far more powerful than violence. Even the supporting characters play similar roles, representing the older generation's reluctance to let go of long-held beliefs. Some characters refuse to accept new evidence because doing so would mean admitting they were wrong for years. Others gradually begin to change once they witness the truth for themselves. This conflict between tradition and progress adds emotional depth to both stories. Visually, both films also celebrate the beauty of the natural world. How to Train Your Dragon fills the skies with breathtaking dragons and dramatic landscapes, while The Sea Beast creates enormous oceans filled with mysterious creatures and incredible adventures. Although their settings are very different, both movies inspire a sense of wonder and exploration. In the end, it's easy to understand why so many fans compare these two animated adventures. They each tell heartfelt stories about challenging prejudice, building unlikely friendships, and discovering that the real monsters aren't always the ones we've been taught to fear. While The Sea Beast stands on its own as an original film, its themes naturally remind audiences of how to train your dragon asterisk. And perhaps that's why both movies have earned such devoted fan bases. They encourage us to question assumptions, show compassion, and remember that understanding often begins with simply taking the time to listen. One of the most emotional similarities between The Sea Beast and How to Train Your Dragon is the way both films make the audience sympathize with creatures that were introduced as terrifying monsters. Early in each story, these beasts are presented as unstoppable threats. The heroes grow up hearing stories about how dangerous they are, and everyone around them believes that defeating these creatures is the greatest achievement imaginable. As the stories unfold, however, that image begins to fall apart. Instead of showing monsters that exist only to destroy, both films reveal creatures capable of fear, trust, and even affection. This shift completely changes the audience's perspective. By the end of each movie, viewers aren't cheering for the hunters anymore. They're hoping the creatures escape safely. Another interesting connection is the role of the older generation. In both worlds, experienced leaders have spent their entire lives fighting these creatures and firmly believe they're doing the right thing. Their identities are built around protecting their people, so accepting a different point of view becomes incredibly difficult. Even when evidence begins to challenge everything they've believed, changing their minds isn't easy. This creates an emotional conflict between tradition and progress that drives much of each story. The younger characters, meanwhile, represent curiosity and open-mindedness. Rather than accepting old beliefs without question, they choose to investigate for themselves. Their willingness to understand the creatures instead of simply fearing them becomes the turning point for everyone around them. It's a reminder that real courage sometimes means questioning traditions that have existed for generations. Both movies also place a strong emphasis on trust. The friendships between humans and creatures don't happen instantly. They're earned through patience, kindness, and repeated acts of bravery. Each side must learn that the other isn't an enemy. Watching that trust slowly develop becomes one of the most rewarding parts of both films and gives the emotional moments even greater impact. The visual storytelling also creates a similar sense of wonder. How to Train Your Dragon fills its world with breathtaking mountain landscapes, towering cliffs, and endless skies where dragons soar freely. The Sea Beast asterisk, meanwhile, trades the skies for vast oceans filled with mysterious islands, enormous waves, and legendary creatures hiding beneath the surface. Although the settings are different, both films encourage viewers to imagine worlds that feel much larger than the characters themselves. Another shared strength is their creature design. Instead of making every monster look frightening, both movies give many of their creatures unique personalities. Some appear playful, others curious, and some even behave like oversized pets. These small details make the creatures feel like real animals rather than simple movie monsters, helping audiences connect with them emotionally. The action sequences also share a similar philosophy. Instead of existing purely for spectacle, each major battle helps develop the story or the characters. Every chase across the sea or flight through the clouds pushes the heroes closer to discovering the truth. The action never feels disconnected from the emotional journey, which is one reason both films remain so engaging from beginning to end. Humor plays an equally important role. Both movies balance intense action with lighthearted moments that allow audiences to connect with the characters. Funny interactions, awkward situations, and charming creature behavior keep the stories entertaining without reducing the emotional stakes. This balance makes both adventures enjoyable for children and adults alike. Perhaps the biggest similarity of all is the message each film leaves behind. They remind us that fear often comes from misunderstanding. People are quick to label something as dangerous simply because it's unfamiliar. But once someone takes the time to understand what they've been taught to fear, everything can change. That's a lesson that reaches far beyond fantasy creatures and animated adventures. Speaking of animated adventures, another film that sparked plenty of comparisons upon its release was Luck Asterisk. As the first feature film from Skydance Animation, many viewers naturally compared it to Pixar's classics, especially because of its colorful world building, emotional storytelling, and imaginative concepts. One of the first things audiences noticed was the presence of a lovable animal companion. While Asterisk Lightyear introduced the robotic cat socks, Luck gave viewers Bob, a talking black cat who becomes Sam's unlikely partner. Although the two characters are very different, both serve as humorous sidekicks who help guide the main character through unfamiliar worlds. Their personalities, comic timing, and loyal friendship quickly made them stand out as fan favorites. Many viewers also noticed similarities in the design of Luck's Asterisk magical world. The brightly colored environments, glowing machinery, and organized systems that control Luck reminded some audiences of the imaginative settings seen in Pixar films. Rather than simply creating a fantasy world, the movie presents an entire hidden society operating behind everyday life, giving viewers the feeling that ordinary events are influenced by extraordinary forces. Whether these similarities were intentional inspirations or simply examples of familiar storytelling techniques, they sparked plenty of discussion among animation fans. In the end, each film still tells its own story, but comparing them offers an interesting look at how modern animated movies often explore similar themes in fresh and creative ways. Another comparison many animation fans have made is between Luck and Toy Story Asterisk. Early in the film, Sam's room has the warm, welcoming atmosphere that Pixar has become famous for. The colorful decorations, cozy lighting, and everyday details make the space feel believable and lived in. It's the same kind of comfort audiences felt when they first stepped into Andy's bedroom in Asterisk Toy Story Asterisk. While the rooms are completely different, they both create the feeling that ordinary places can become the setting for extraordinary adventures. Perhaps the strongest comparison, however, is between Luck Asterisk and Monsters, Inc. Both movies imagine an invisible world operating alongside our own. In Monsters, Inc. Asterisk, an entire city depends on collecting children's screams to power the monster world. In Luck Asterisk, another hidden society quietly works behind the scenes to influence the good and bad fortune people experience every day. In both stories, humans know nothing about these secret organizations until one unexpected event changes everything. These hidden worlds are carefully organized, almost like giant corporations. Employees have specific jobs, complicated machinery keeps everything running, and strict rules exist to prevent humans from discovering the truth. Watching the characters navigate these systems makes the fantasy worlds feel surprisingly believable. Both films also introduce special teams responsible for handling emergencies. Whenever something unexpected happens, trained crews immediately step in to contain the situation and restore order. Their uniforms, equipment, and serious attitudes give these scenes an extra layer of excitement while showing just how important secrecy is within these magical societies. Animal companions are another area where fans notice similarities. Bob, the talking black cat in Luck, quickly became one of the movie's most memorable characters. Instead of speaking with the cute, high-pitched voice audiences might expect, Bob has the calm confidence of an adult. That unexpected contrast makes many of his funniest moments even more entertaining. Animation has a long history of playing with audience expectations in this way. Sometimes a character's appearance suggests one personality, only for their voice or behavior to reveal something completely different. Those surprises often become some of the most memorable jokes because they catch viewers completely off guard. Talking animals themselves have always been a major part of animated storytelling. Whether it's fish exploring the ocean, insects building entire civilizations, or household pets going on adventures, animated movies frequently use talking animals to tell emotional and humorous stories. Bob fits naturally into that tradition while still bringing his own unique personality to the film. Another topic many viewers discussed after watching Luck was its character design. Some animation fans noticed that Sam's facial features share certain design trends seen in many modern animated movies. Large, expressive eyes, softer facial proportions, and simplified features allow animators to communicate emotions quickly and clearly. These design choices aren't unique to one studio, but they've become a recognizable part of contemporary animation. Color also plays an important storytelling role throughout Luck. Different environments use carefully selected color palettes to influence how the audience feels. Bright greens and golds often accompany moments associated with good fortune and optimism, while darker or cooler colors help create uncertainty and tension. Rather than existing purely for visual appeal, these color choices quietly reinforce the emotions of each scene. The movie also blends fantasy with everyday life, another storytelling approach that animation fans love. Most of Sam's world looks completely normal until hidden magical forces begin revealing themselves. Suddenly, ordinary streets, apartments, and workplaces become connected to an incredible unseen universe operating just out of sight. This contrast between the familiar and the fantastic gives the story much of its charm. As Skydance Animation continues producing new films, viewers have also begun looking for small references that connect its movies together. Just as long-running animation studios reward attentive audiences with recurring details and hidden nods, newer studios have started establishing their own traditions. While these references are still limited, they hint at a shared creative identity that may continue growing in future releases. One area where Luck especially resembles many successful animated films is its storytelling structure. The movie begins with a protagonist searching for something they desperately want. Along the journey, unexpected companions appear, obstacles become increasingly difficult, and the main character gradually changes as a person. Rather than simply achieving their goal, they learn valuable lessons about friendship, perseverance, and self-worth. It's a timeless storytelling approach that continues to resonate with audiences of all ages. Perhaps the biggest strength of Luck is its emotional foundation. Beneath the colorful fantasy world lies a deeply personal story about belonging, hope, and finding a place where you truly feel accepted. Sam's experiences give the adventure genuine emotional weight, ensuring that the magical elements always serve the characters rather than overshadowing them. Finally, there's the animation itself. Smooth character movement, detailed environments, expressive facial animation, and imaginative world building all contribute to a polished visual experience. While every animation studio develops its own artistic style, it's easy to understand why many viewers compared Luck to other beloved animated films. It embraces heartfelt storytelling, memorable characters, imaginative fantasy, and emotional themes that have made family animation so popular for decades. One of the first things many viewers noticed about Luck was its animation quality. The movie features highly detailed characters, expressive facial animation, realistic lighting, and richly designed environments that immediately reminded some audiences of modern animated classics. Every strand of hair, every reflection, and every carefully crafted background helps bring the world to life. While the film has its own artistic identity, it's easy to understand why many people compared its visual style to other high-budget animated features. Lighting also plays an important role throughout the movie. Warm sunlight fills hopeful moments, while cooler colors create scenes filled with uncertainty or mystery. These subtle visual choices help guide the audience's emotions without drawing attention to themselves. It's the kind of careful craftsmanship that animation fans often appreciate after multiple viewings. The world of Luck is also filled with imaginative technology that doesn't exist in real life. Behind every lucky break and unfortunate accident lies an enormous system of magical machinery working around the clock. From complex conveyor belts to intricate devices that manage fortune itself, the hidden world feels both magical and surprisingly organized. Creating believable fantasy technology has become a hallmark of many successful animated films, allowing audiences to imagine how impossible worlds might actually function. Perhaps what makes Lux stand out most is that all of its fantasy elements ultimately serve a deeply personal story. Beneath the colorful settings and magical inventions is a heartfelt journey about belonging, hope, friendship, and finding where you truly fit in. The emotional focus gives the adventure lasting impact long after the credits roll. Whether or not viewers believe Luck reaches the same heights as Pixar's most celebrated films is a matter of personal opinion. Some appreciate its optimistic message and imaginative world building, while others feel it shares familiar storytelling techniques seen throughout modern animation. Either way, it sparked plenty of discussion among animation fans and introduced audiences to a creative new fantasy universe. Speaking of animated projects inspired by the past, few modern series celebrate classic cartoons quite like the Cuphead show. The original Cuphead video game became famous for recreating the visual style of 1930s hand-drawn animation, and the Netflix series proudly continues that tradition. Nearly every episode is filled with visual tributes to the golden age of animation, especially the early cartoons produced by Disney and other pioneering studios. One of the most noticeable influences comes from classic sea adventures. Whenever Cuphead and Mugman find themselves facing enormous ocean creatures, the scenes capture the exaggerated scale, dramatic expressions, and playful sense of danger that defined many early animated shorts. Rather than feeling frightening, these giant creatures become part of the show's energetic cartoon comedy. The series also embraces another hallmark of vintage animation, turning ordinary situations into wildly exaggerated adventures. A simple walk through a forest can suddenly become a terrifying experience as shadows stretch across the ground and harmless objects appear to come alive. These moments recreate the playful suspense that audiences loved in early animated films, where imagination often transformed everyday locations into unforgettable settings. Music and dancing are equally important parts of the show's identity. Instead of limiting songs to special moments, many episodes allow entire groups of characters to burst into synchronized performances filled with energetic movement and expressive animation. This style reflects an era when music and animation were almost inseparable, creating a rhythm that still feels timeless decades later. Classic cartoon designs also influence many of the supporting characters. Playing cards, household objects, ghosts, animals, and musical instruments all come to life with oversized eyes, flexible bodies, and exaggerated facial expressions. These designs celebrate the creativity of early animation, where almost anything could become a living character. The personalities of Cuphead and Mugman themselves continue this tradition. Their simple shapes, expressive faces, oversized gloves, and rubber hose animation make them feel like they stepped directly out of an animated short from nearly a century ago. At the same time, their modern humor and fast-paced adventures help introduce that classic style to an entirely new generation. Magic also plays a huge role throughout the series. Spells, enchanted objects, mischievous ghosts, and supernatural characters appear regularly, often transforming ordinary situations into hilarious chaos. These magical sequences allow the animators to stretch, squash, and exaggerate movement in ways that perfectly capture the playful spirit of early cartoons. Perhaps the greatest achievement of the Cuphead show is how it balances nostalgia with originality. Instead of simply copying older cartoons, it celebrates their artistic style while telling fresh stories filled with modern humor and memorable characters. Longtime animation fans can enjoy spotting visual inspirations, while younger audiences can simply appreciate the colorful adventures without needing to recognize every historical reference. In many ways, the series serves as both entertainment and a celebration of animation history. It reminds viewers how influential those early cartoons were, while proving that their visual style and storytelling techniques remain just as entertaining today. Whether you're a lifelong fan of classic animation or discovering these influences for the first time, The Cuphead Show offers a fun reminder of how timeless great animation can be. Animated movies often inspire comparisons, especially when they introduce lovable creatures, breathtaking worlds, and emotional stories about unlikely friendships. Sometimes a brand new film reminds audiences of a classic, not because it copies it, but because it explores similar ideas in its own unique way. One movie that sparked this kind of conversation is The Sea Beast Asterisk. Ever since its release, viewers have pointed out how many elements seem familiar to fans of How to Train Your Dragon Asterisk. From fearsome monsters that turn out to be misunderstood to brave heroes who question everything they've been taught, both films share themes that have made audiences fall in love with them. One of the biggest similarities is the relationship between humans and the creatures they once feared. In both stories, monsters are introduced as dangerous enemies responsible for years of conflict. The people who hunt them grow up believing they are protecting the world, never stopping to question whether those stories are actually true. As the characters learn more about the creatures, they begin to realize that appearances can be deceiving. What once seemed like terrifying beasts slowly become loyal companions, proving that understanding is far more powerful than fear. The main creatures in both films also leave a lasting impression. In the sea beast Asterisk, Red may look enormous and intimidating, but beneath her fierce appearance is a gentle and intelligent animal capable of forming deep bonds with humans. Fans immediately notice that this emotional journey feels similar to Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon Asterisk. Both creatures have expressive eyes, playful personalities, and a level of intelligence that completely changes how the heroes view them. Instead of remaining monsters, they become trusted friends who help bridge the gap between two worlds. Another striking similarity is how both movies challenge traditions that have existed for generations. Jacob Holland grows up believing that hunting sea beasts is an honorable profession, just as Hiccup is raised to think dragons are enemies that must be defeated. At first, both characters accept these beliefs without question because they trust the people who raised them. However, everything changes after they spend time with the very creatures they were taught to fear. Their first-hand experiences reveal that history is far more complicated than anyone realized. Both stories also feature young characters whose curiosity drives the entire adventure. Macy Brumble refuses to accept simple answers and constantly questions the stories she's been told. Her determination to uncover the truth mirrors Hiccup's willingness to challenge Viking traditions after meeting Toothless. Rather than blindly following old customs, they choose compassion, even when it means standing against their own communities. The emotional heart of both films comes from the friendships that develop between humans and creatures. Watching these relationships grow creates some of the most memorable moments in each story. The monsters are never treated as mindless animals, but as intelligent beings with emotions, personalities, and families of their own. As trust develops, both heroes realize that coexistence is possible if people are willing to let go of generations of fear and misunderstanding. Another reason audiences compare these films is their incredible world building. The Sea Beast creates a dangerous ocean filled with mysterious creatures, legendary hunters, and massive ships built for epic battles. Meanwhile, How to Train Your Dragon introduces a Viking village surrounded by dragons of every shape and size. Although one story takes place on the sea and the other in the sky, both worlds feel rich, believable, and full of adventure. The action sequences also follow a similar emotional pattern. At first, every encounter between humans and monsters feels like a battle for survival. But as the story unfolds, those exciting fights gradually give way to moments of understanding, teamwork, and mutual respect. By the end of each film, the greatest victory isn't defeating the creatures. It's ending the cycle of fear that kept both sides apart for so long. Whether these similarities were intentional or simply the result of both films exploring timeless storytelling themes, there's no denying that fans continue to compare them. Both celebrate courage, empathy, and the willingness to question long-held beliefs. More importantly, they remind us that true heroes aren't always the strongest fighters. They're often the people brave enough to see the truth when everyone else refuses. Have you ever watched an animated movie and suddenly felt like you've seen part of it before? Maybe it was a familiar character, a scene that reminded you of another classic, or a storyline that seemed strangely recognizable. It's a common feeling among animation fans, and there's a good reason for it. Animation studios have always inspired one another, borrowing storytelling techniques, visual styles, and filmmaking ideas that have proven successful over the years. Sometimes those similarities are completely intentional as a tribute, while other times they're simply the result of great storytellers exploring the same timeless themes. One of the biggest reasons animated movies feel familiar is because they often rely on classic storytelling structures. Audiences naturally connect with stories about unlikely heroes, loyal friendships, misunderstood creatures, and characters who discover who they truly are. Whether it's a princess leaving home, a young inventor proving everyone wrong, or an outcast finding acceptance, these emotional journeys have entertained audiences for generations. They're universal stories that continue to work because they connect with people of every age. Disney has been one of the biggest influences in animation history. For nearly a century, its films have introduced unforgettable characters, groundbreaking animation techniques, and memorable songs that continue to inspire artists around the world. Because of that influence, it's no surprise that many newer animated movies remind viewers of Disney classics. That doesn't necessarily mean they're copying. Instead, many filmmakers openly acknowledge that Disney helped shape the way they learned to tell stories. Pixar has had a similar impact on modern animation. When Toy Story became the first fully computer-animated feature film, it completely changed the industry. Suddenly, studios everywhere began experimenting with computer animation, expressive characters, and emotionally driven stories that appealed to both children and adults. Since then, audiences have naturally compared almost every new animated movie to Pixar's work, especially films that combine humor with heartfelt emotional moments. One fascinating part of Disney's history is how the studio managed animation long before computers existed. Every second of an animated movie required dozens of individual drawings created entirely by hand. Producing a feature film meant artists had to complete hundreds of thousands of drawings, making the process incredibly expensive and time-consuming. To keep production moving, Disney occasionally reused animation from earlier films, carefully adapting existing movements to fit new characters and new stories. If you've ever watched two classic Disney movies side by side, you've probably noticed these hidden connections without even realizing it. A dance might look familiar, a running sequence may have the same movements, or two different characters might share identical facial expressions. These weren't accidents. They were practical production decisions that allowed artists to spend more time creating new scenes while still maintaining Disney's famously smooth animation quality. Interestingly, many fans didn't notice these similarities for decades. Before the internet made side-by-side comparisons easy, audiences simply enjoyed each movie on its own. Today, however, animation enthusiasts regularly compare scenes frame by frame, revealing clever production shortcuts that once went completely unnoticed. Of course, similarities between movies aren't limited to animation techniques. Storytelling itself often follows recognizable patterns. Many animated heroes begin as ordinary individuals who dream of something greater. Along the way, they meet loyal friends, face impossible challenges, lose confidence, and eventually discover the courage to overcome their greatest fears. It's a formula that continues to resonate because it's rooted in universal human experiences. Another common element is the misunderstood creature. Countless animated films introduce monsters, dragons, robots, or magical beings that initially appear frightening but later become lovable companions. These characters remind audiences that appearances can be deceiving and that understanding others often requires looking beyond first impressions. It's a lesson that has appeared in animated movies for decades because it continues to feel meaningful regardless of the setting. Visual design also plays a huge role in why different movies remind us of one another. Certain character proportions have become popular because they make emotions easier to read. Large expressive eyes, rounded facial features, and exaggerated body language help audiences instantly understand how a character feels. While each studio has its own artistic identity, many successful animated films share these design principles because they're effective forms of visual storytelling. Color is another powerful storytelling tool. Bright, warm colors often create feelings of comfort, hope, and excitement, while darker shades build suspense or danger. Animation directors carefully choose color palettes to guide the audience's emotions throughout a story. You may not consciously notice these choices while watching a movie, but they strongly influence how each scene feels. Music works the same way. An uplifting orchestral score can transform an ordinary moment into something unforgettable, while quiet piano music can make even simple conversations deeply emotional. Great animated films combine visuals and music so seamlessly that audiences often remember how a scene made them feel more than the individual dialogue itself. As animation technology has evolved, the creative possibilities have grown dramatically. Modern artists can create detailed lighting, realistic water, lifelike fur, and breathtaking environments that were impossible just a few decades ago. Yet despite these technological advances, the most memorable animated movies still succeed because of their characters rather than their visual effects. Perhaps that's why audiences continue comparing animated films. Great stories naturally remind us of other great stories. Instead of asking whether one movie copied another, it's often more interesting to see how filmmakers build upon ideas that have inspired generations before them. Every new animated film adds its own perspective while paying respect to the classics that helped shape the industry. Animation has always been built on creativity, collaboration, and inspiration. Artists learn from the legends who came before them, develop their own unique styles, and eventually inspire the next generation of storytellers. It's a creative cycle that has allowed animation to evolve for nearly 100 years while still delivering the magic that audiences love. The next time you watch your favorite animated movie, pay close attention to the small details. Notice the expressive character animation, the carefully chosen colors, the emotional music, and the timeless storytelling techniques. You may discover connections to other beloved classics that you've never noticed before. And once you start spotting those hidden inspirations, you'll realize that the world of animation is far more connected than it first appears.